Thank you, Noah. I'm told I would not like Dead Poet Society, but I tend not to like most things, so maybe I'm supposed to say it. I know it's me between you and the end of the day, and exactly what you need to see right now is some new data that some joker in red pants has never presented to an audience before. I will exceed those expectations. I hope the sugar's been evenly distributed and to all who need it. So let's crack on. So as Noah said, I am Nathan Maharaj. I'm Director of Merchandising. That effectively means I'm kind of head bookseller. That is what it is. I'm here today to talk with you about something I'm often asked to talk about when I'm brought into to conferences and seminars, and that is, no. It is ebook pricing. But we're gonna talk about it in a slightly different way from how I presented on this topic before. And like I say, this is new data. Never had this stuff up here. Fortunately, my colleague who's responsible for pulling these analytics are right here. So if I'm going down, he's coming with me. Thank you, Ryan. So yes, fascinating as it would be to discuss, the nuances of, pricing among different segments of the Kobo catalog. Right up front, there will be no histograms, and there will be no zany line charts. That stuff is strictly for the ACP. All right. That's how they roll. They demand it. No, instead we're going to ask some big questions, like really big questions, because we've got the data, and so we're going to look at it from a bunch of different angles and see if we can answer these profound philosophical queries. And if I haven't said it before, I've never presented this data before, so this is going to be fantastic. You're going to have lots of questions. I'm going to get it wrong, I promise. It'll be unclear. I'll gloss over important things, and you'll think you're being sold something. So we'll see. So this is how we're going to cover it. Section 1, books get bought, then what happens? We hitherto have not known, but we know a little now. The wages of reading, what's the hourly cost of reading? And a very short study on some serial publishing, which actually now, following the last presentation, I'm thinking I should actually involve breakfast cereal, because that is an addressable market. People read the box when they're sitting at the table just for want of something to read. Different talk. Okay, so starting with bought, now what? We are living in the era of sales data, in case you didn't notice. If a channel of any significance is selling a title, you can find out within a matter of days, or in some cases, mere hours. After a decade of being dutifully preached at, we have come to accept sales data not only as gospel, but it's our master. Everything from print runs to marketing to author advances now has some of this in the mix. And if it doesn't, you feel bad about not having it in the mix. And guilt is an important part of faith too, so that's fine. Now this abundance of retail level data, it's highlighted what we still don't know, right? We don't know which books get read when they leave the store. We know as readers, our personal experiences as readers, we've got a little bit of guidance from that. But the people in this room, as a sample group, couldn't be further from couldn't be more useless as a representative, and myself included. We are outliers. We are freaks. No one will build a business on us, except for the good folks at BookNet Canada. We read too much. We have unusual economic forces driving our reading decisions. Whether it's the books you get for free or the stuff you have to read to do your job well. While we may never know what's going to happen to this book that this guy's browsing when he gets home, ebooks are different. Right? Especially those that are read inside a cloud-based, app-serving ecosystem. Keeping track of a user's library securely in the cloud, it means syncing not only which books have been purchased, but also which have been opened, and where to place the bookmark so the user can pick up where they left off. And a byproduct of all that activity is a mountain of data, the like of which didn't exist until the rise of ebooks. So to make sense of it, we take a page from the playbook of email marketing and e-commerce. So, email marketers, e-commerce veterans, you will be familiar with open rates. You'd be familiar with completed, let's call it conversion, reaching a goal in maybe Google Analytics, and session duration, number of sessions and duration. People have, there's that, that not funny joke about, an ebook is just a website that doesn't do anything, because actually, yeah, it kind of is a website, and it does plenty because people are reading it. So, this is the lifeblood of online retail, these numbers. But they have application in our little world of content consumption, also known as book selling. But I've been doing it a long time, so I'm looking for a new name for my career because I have to reinvent myself. So, with all that in mind, we're going to look at an array. This is the audience participation part. It's coming. Okay, get ready. Warm up. I'm going to need hands in the air. So just if you have rotator cuff injuries, just warm it up right now. We're going to look at an array of Canadian literary award-winning or nominated, because it's Canadian and we're nice, titles, which you've all heard of, I guarantee it. And one of them actually stands to win Canada Reads. Could still happen. It's in this mix. Now here's, let me show you the percentage of opens. So people bought it, and then among this handful of prestigious titles, this is the open rate. What should shock us all is that it's not 100%, right? It's not even close. The top performers are getting a C grade on this. It's really solid if you can sell a book and get 2/3 of the people who bought it to open it. That's amazing. Well done. Jim's asking what the time period is. It is, so the way we had to measure this was just to grab it on a certain date. So none of these books is less than 90 days old. So they're all mature in the market. They've been sitting on customer shelves for a good long time. The majority of sales have happened well into the past, to the point where you feel guilty about having bought the book. It's kind of in that cycle. So here's completions. So as a subset of people who opened it, how many actually got to the end? Here we go. There. Let me get a little bit further, and then, or you can throw something. You're apparently equipped with confectionery javelins, and again, I must thank our host for their foresight. Is that, oh, there's my laser pointer. Awesome. Technology, man. Thanks, Microsoft. So there's your completions. Let's do this one now. There's a number of sessions it took to get to the end. Yeah. So what does this tell us? It tells us this was not a love affair. Okay. This was a marriage. All right. They got to the end of sheer determination. Last year was a year of very long books that we all felt compelled to read. This was one of them. So a certain number of people, 2/3 of the people who bought it were like, no, it's never going to happen. And then 2/3 who actually cracked it gave up. And then the ones who did finish it, this is their journey. There's no medal for that. What's fascinating is you take something comparable like this. So these two books are very similar, similar open rates, similar completion rates, but this author dragged the audience through a much, much longer journey. This is a sticky author. This is somebody who needs to be regarded with, if it comes down to picking one or the other, this is somebody who's really pulled their readership along, and they've achieved something substantial if you look at this field. Now, over here, we have yet another of our prestigious award winners. Thousands of copies sold, talk of the town, bookstores clamoring for stock. 1 in 5 people who bought it actually decided to give it a go. And then fairly high completion rate once they got into it. Once the faithful opened it up, they got to the end at a respectable, almost 50% rate. And it took them a very short amount of time. You do have to wonder how this would come down were the burden of the number of sessions higher. But what I find fascinating is to speak of, if all of these sold exactly the same number of units, to speak of the readerships of these authors, one is speaking of some very, very different things. Some of these books have real readerships. People got to the end, they enjoyed them, it was fantastic. Others are gathering dust on the shelves, and when this author shows up with the next book, the one should expect the public is not going to go, fantastic, I can't wait. They're going to go, oh God, not again? Or they're going to say, nah, wasn't really into it. Or they're going to say, oh my God, I cannot wait. This is going to be the best. And I'm going to foist it upon my book club because that's how this makes me feel. So amazing, right? We've never been able to see this before. And now we can see this. So I've been messing with you guys a little bit. There's a twist here. This is actually the Bizac for literary fiction. It's not actually a book. This is your baselines. So now we can see who's above average and below. Again, the achievements of these guys is really remarkable. Both actually put a significant duration burden on the readership. Both completely blew the doors off any kind of normal rate for open or complete, and they really killed it. And this one, of course, is completely freakish, and this is a disappointment. It got the completion rate is perfectly normal. Once people began their journey, they got to the end. But well below the baseline for opening. So there's something about this book that made people kind of not engage. They bought it, it's the kale in your grocery cart. Like people bought it because they were supposed to, and then they never opened it. And they should have, because it's good for them. But it shouldn't shock us, right? As readers, we know with some books are slogs, some pull us deeper and deeper until we turn the final page. There are books we buy because it seems to be the thing to do, and there's books we buy because someone we trust assured us that we're going to have a great time, and we can see which type of reader most of these books produce. So it's kind of nutty, right? Like what's going on? And I think it's safe to say that it turns out that the stack of books on the nightstand didn't get left behind by digital. That hoarding behavior still exists. And for various reasons, readers are buying faster than they can read. And it's familiar to all of us. We all do this. We buy in the moment that we intend to, we have an intention toward reading that we don't not always get to. And maybe we're just inherently greedy. There's something about readers that it's just, technology hasn't done anything to adjust our vision of what we'll realistically get through, So, and I think that's kind of okay. Because people read for a lot of different reasons. Entertainment, information, escape, enlightenment, participation in a cultural phenomenon, because it's good for them, and any combination of these. So, in light of this kind of result, which I have to emphasize is normal, right? This isn't like I didn't pick the dogs. It was an assortment of books that speak to the same type of reader and were released long enough ago that we've accumulated enough data. This is normal. This is what people are doing. This is the hard reality. This is our second. So remember when BookNet came in and we were like, holy shit, I can't believe how much inventory stores are sitting on. This is that next revelation. It'll get better. The numbers won't change. We'll just feel better about them. So we're discovering that there's a spectrum of experiences that spans, when the book is sold, then a bunch of different things can happen to it that should impact how we think about what we're putting into the market. So let's talk about the wages of reading, because it costs money to read, and it costs a different amount if you're going to not read the book, or if you're going to not enjoy the book. So quick. Who thinks it's which of these? So that's comics, graphics, and novels, erotica, literary fiction, romance, mystery detective, Gladwellian, big ideas, it's some business, it's community and culture, and biography and autobiography. Which do you think has the? So let me give you a clue for which is most expensive to read by the hour. So here's your average sell price. So you've got that idea now. Okay, so you can see the most expensive stuff, right? Not necessarily the most expensive to read by the hour. If you're going to spend a lot of hours with literary fiction, then you're going to recoup that. So who thinks it's comics and graphic novels? This is the most expensive thing you could be reading by the hour. Okay. Erotica? Nice to see you, Shannon. Literary fiction? Huh. Romance? Okay. Mystery? Nobody? All right. The big ideas stuff. Oh, you guys. Biography and autobiography. All right. It is big ideas by a substantial margin. It is not an efficient thing to spend your money on as leisure activity for reading. It is a bad idea. All those economics books at the front, they should say, "What have you done, stupid?" What we see here is, so this is cost per hour. And what you see with comics and graphic novels is a curious thing, that the types of comics and graphic novels, digital, that come in, that are available now, that Kobo sells, seem to take about an hour to read, because that's your average sell price, and your cost per hour is about your average sell price, so there you have it. But yeah, wow, literary fiction costs a lot, but people get good value out of it. But the big ideas, good God, it's bad. Worse yet, there's your abandonment rate. That's people who don't get to the end. So what you got to figure there is this is a reluctant readership. Like, these are people who are like, this is like they're paying their wireless bill when they're buying. That's how it's got to feel to buy this, to spend the $16 on an ebook that you're going to read for a couple of hours this evening, versus your spouse has been reading a mystery for like 3-4 days and they're really digging it and they spend only 12. It's got to bother you. So that's yeah. So genre fiction though tends to be, people tend to stick with it, right? Who's gonna give up on erotica, right? Because we know what happens at the end. That's the best scene. And same with romance, which is often similar. Mystery detective, they're gonna find out who the killer is. Literary fiction, there may be a superfluous epilogue, so there's a slightly higher abandonment rate. And then biography and autobiography, you sort of get to the modern era where the guy's plugging his new record, and you're like, I don't care. Tell me about Band-Aid again. Yeah. So now we can look at engagement. So let's look at the sessions. This is this is terribly fun. So all right. So did they come back to the book? So what was like the lifetime? What was the lifestyle of reading this book? Did they come back a bunch of times? Did they spend a lot of time with it in each sitting? Who figures there was which category? So just shout it out. Which category do you think had the most sessions? Like, people just kept coming back to it till they were done. The literary fiction. We're feeling literary fiction. Okay. Anybody want to dissent from that? Erotica. You think erotica? Because there's rereading value in erotica. Yes. Yeah, so erotica was high. Erotica was fairly high. Romance, fairly high. Tends to be a lower number of sessions for our Gladwellian big ideas. It sort of proves out that these books are too damn long, and I get it already. And there is your session length. So erotica, among genre fiction, shorter sessions. I'm going to leave that there. Mystery and detective. This is so when we talk about page turners, there's your page turner. That's a page turner. That's a sticky book. That is a person who is practicing some very poor sleep habits, and they're probably not dealing with their family the way they should. That's a reader. Right? That's how we feed our families. But Gladwellian big ideas, they're sort of like, yeah, okay, I get to the end of the chapter. I'm going to go see what's on TV. There's no podcast or something. This is a reader not having fun, and we should be worried about that, right? This should concern us, because it's stuff like that gives rise to a whole industry of these like parasitic works that basically exist because we all know this is too long and too expensive. And then there's stuff that isn't even books. It's just like services. Like, you want to read a bunch of books, but you know they're too long, and we know they're too long, and you know they're too expensive, and we know. So here's a service we're just going to tell you. It should be of some concern because they're delivering exactly on that promise. Better dollar per hour value. How crass is that, right? We just got used to BookNet, and now this jerk is up here with dollar per hour value of books. What's this world come to? So close section. Let's absorb that. Take it for what it is. We can't unsee any of that. All right. Let's look at a serial really quickly. So one of the big trends that's emerged in the last 12 months is serial publication, digital exclusive serials, especially in erotic romance. We've seen it from Opal Carew, Beth Carey. We've seen a lot of self-published authors do it too at a surprisingly professional level, to the point where I can't tell the difference. So what's it worth? We know that 2 centuries ago, readers rioted for the latest installments from Dickens. I think it would be different with erotic romance because there's a social factor. If people, you don't want to demonstrate in public how eager you are to see the next bit. We'll see. There's some doubt. There has been some doubt about whether you can whether it's commercially viable to release a novel piecemeal. So data some of you have seen before. So this is going to warm you up to the part we're going to get to. For others, this is going to be fresh. So here is a 6-part series, one of the more successful ones. And here is how it built, volume by volume. See, building towards a climax, and there we go. Sorry. Okay. All right. So it's good, right? Built up sales volume through the series, gets to the end, fantastic. Looks like a hell of a thing because we get to this point right here, and this is amazing. This is suddenly this very cheap product is raking in major dough. Where are we? Yeah, and this is in a genre that's, though it's not among the highest in terms of average sell price, by selling at $1.99, the weighted average of what a customer spent to participate in this, anybody who bought one of these books would be in this sample. On average, they spent over $8. So over 4 volumes was normal. And in fact, when you get right down to like how did the pattern shake out, and you look at abandonment of purchase, we'll get to reading in a second. Purchase, we see that only about a quarter of the audience quit after buying just one. They're like, one, I'm done, and I'm out. If you went to 2, you probably didn't quit. I mean, this could be mortality figures here. I don't know. These people had intentions of continuing, and if you got to 5, you were sure as hell not going to quit till you got to the end. So really sticky, seems to work, certainly drives purchases. The question, of course, that I've raised now is, as now you're like, sales data doesn't tell me anything. I don't know anything about what happens to that book. It leaves the store, just nobody, right? So it's sold, great, wonderful, but did anyone read it? Yeah, they did. They totally did. The abandonment rate of erotica, as we saw, is about 30%, and every volume of the series held to it. What surprised me was that the abandonment rate didn't like drop through the floor. I expected people to be a little more stuck to it. It's an unfortunate choice of words as we're talking about erotic fiction, but I expected it to be a little bit more propulsive. Everything sounds terrible. I expected readers to continue their journey through the narrative of these 2 people just finding love in this crazy world. In any case, it was sufficient to drive strong sales through the series, and it really set this author up for another hit. My whole team, we're eagerly awaiting translations so we can do in Italy what we did in US and Canada and UK and everything like that. It's wonderful, fantastic. It worked. And that's that from the serial study. So I will wrap up, as I think I've gone over time, and I'm between you and the end. So things we know. We know that not everybody reads everything they buy. We know that not everything that gets opened gets finished. We know that big ideas cost a lot, and we know that serial publication drives sales and actually builds a readership. More stuff we wanted to explore, stuff we didn't get to, stuff I wanted to look at. The impact of promotional pricing on completion percentage. What happens, do people who bought your book at $4.99 tend not to read it? Or do they tend to read it right away and finish it? We don't know. Got to look at it. When a customer reads outside their core interest area, how is completion rate impacted? People who love romance, when they catch that, that swerving particle of literary fiction, do they engage with it in a different way? What happens when, the genre hit becomes the mainstream? How do readers engage with that? Are the literary readers the ones that are finishing Malcolm Gladwell books, and the people who don't tend to read literary fiction, we don't know. Got to get to that. And what's in common with the bestsellers that have extreme completion rates? And this is on the level of big data, machine learning. Not sure how to do it. Semantic analysis of some kind. I don't know. Fleisch-Kincaid reading score. No idea. But there might be some. We would be remiss not to try to figure out what is it that pulls people to the end of a book. What makes them conclude a reading experience with velocity? And how can publishers ensure that their books are bought and read? If it matters. I'm not sure. There's always that question of, I got paid. Am I worried? Is it a concern if people are buying books and it has always been so? Is it really a problem that they're not reading them? that we've only got a certain core of people who tend to read books that they buy. It's not that it's not that 1/3 of people never read the books that they buy. It's that they buy too much and only get around to 2/3. So lots more questions to explore. It's a big unwieldy data set. Ryan's got to wear support garments now to keep himself upright. It's so heavy as does actually Sarah did the heavy lifting. Ryan just likes to dress that way. So thank you so much.